Gentlemen, good morning. I know Alex is standing by. There he is.
Right there.
But over the last, 14 hours or so, we've had some major news about the best defensive end duo in college football. And Alex, Kyle Kennard won the big award last night, and today Dylan Stewart is being paid handsomely to be the face of the defense next year.
Yeah, what an awesome honor for Kyle Kennard and South Carolina. Really, I mean, there was a absolutely problem this year throughout the season, and just one for identifying him, with Kennard, and Sterling Lucas just continued to develop. Just what an honor for South Carolina. Then the big news with Dylan Stewart this morning, coming back and signing a new NIL agreement. It's huge for South Carolina. They got a lot of building blocks to kind of build on from this past season. And that's just going to be one of these things where, South Carolina can build off and recruit off of that, having two of the best defensive ends in the country and then one coming back next year.
Guys, it's been a while since South Carolina has had a continuous run of, I'd say, pretty good news. I mean, the one hiccup in there was the fact that the CFP, for whatever reason, doesn't believe that they're one of the teams that deserves to be competing for the national championship. Obviously, that's a pretty big hiccup. But, you got all this young talent, and it's beginning. I mean, did any of you see the video put out by Carolina football yesterday? It was about 6 minutes long. It takes
Yeah. Another good one.
Happened to catch. It was a masterful piece of production. They had of course, the audio from the headset somehow dubbed in there. Did any of you happen to catch the quote by Mike Shula when Lenore Stellers broke free and ran into the end zone? He said, "I ain't never seen anything like that."
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
Guys, Mike Shula's seen a lot of freaking football. Just little things like that. It's pretty exciting right now for this group that Shane Beamer has, Alex. And now that we're in portal season and we got still another signing day to go, et cetera, et cetera. Carolina's NIL, as JC has pointed out multiple times, Carolina's NIL situation is significantly better than it's been, and probably significantly better than a lot of people actually think that it is, thanks to the hard work by so many, including the fans. The next couple of months, South Carolina could be dealing with something they've never dealt with before, and that means they're in pretty high demand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of goes back to what I was saying with Kennard. South Carolina has a lot to sell, not only in high school recruiting, but this transfer portal cycle. I mean, you think about with Lenore Stellers, there's going to be a lot of players that want to come play with Lenore Stellers just because of what he showed, not only what he could do on the ground, but, think about those Missouri and Texas A&M games. I mean, he kind of lit those defenses up through the air. So it's going to be an attractive spot for wide receivers, offensive linemen. You're already seeing some offensive linemen set up some visits. And, with this transfer portal, it's, just obviously just officially opened up yesterday, but a bunch of names entered yesterday, but this thing's going to keep on, evolving too. There's going to be a bunch of more names enter the portal, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see who South Carolina can go out there and land, because they got obviously a lot to sell here on both sides of the ball.
All right, let's go to the offensive coordinator situation. What do you know about it, and any updates?
Not at this moment. It seems like this is one where, obviously with Dow Loggins going to App State, that kind of happened pretty quickly. Obviously he interviewed and then got the job officially on Saturday. And, I think it's one where Shane Beamer is going to kind of continue to take his time to see what's the best option. I think there's probably a little bit of, wanting to get it done just because of the transfer portal cycle. And, I think, one name you think about in-house for South Carolina is Mike Shula. Do they, elevate him? And it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because, obviously you can see what Mike Shula helped with Lenore Stellers. You can watch him on the sideline during the game, and he's always there right beside him talking to him. And, with him, he has that offensive coordinator experience, has the experience. So I don't think there needs to be like an audition type of thing with that, for the bowl game. I know that some people, you can read and see some people are saying that, but I don't think you would have to go that road if Shane Beamer goes down that path. But it's going to be interesting to see if there are any outside candidates that kind of evolve here and see who South Carolina can go get.
Yeah, I would love to know what that contact list has looked like. I mean, This is a very sexy job to OCs right now. Very sexy. And but I do think that Mike Shula, if he wants to be the OC, certainly has a leg up what have you learned about Mike Shula throughout the season, and how I think Tony actually had a report this morning that mentioned that Dowell had a lot to do with him coming to South Carolina, which is very unique, and potentially, wanting him to follow up to Boone, I guess. But what have you learned about Mike Shula and how much influence he's had over the offense and the quarterback room and all those things that we don't get to see?
Yeah, I think it's just that he does a lot of the stuff that's kind of goes behind the scenes and kind of helping put the game plan together, helping Dowell this year put the game plan together. But I think the biggest thing he kind of helped do in that it was really with that quarterback room, and especially the Norris Sellers. Kind of goes back to what I was saying just a second ago. Like, he was really kind of that guy on the field who, Dowell's up in the press box calling the plays and communicating with Norris through the headset, but Mike Shula was down there on the field, and as soon as Norris came off the field, Mike Shula can go and grab him, and they can go look at the iPads and see, all right, here's what you could have done, here's what you did really good. So I think it's really the behind the scenes stuff is really where Mike Shula helped, and especially helping develop Norris Sellers. I think he played a huge part in that.
Go ahead, JC. I know you got your mic off.
I tend to agree. I think, Mike Shula's coached a lot of good quarterbacks through the years. Yeah. At Alabama, they kept getting hurt. I mean, he had kind of a run of injuries there, like he did, like South Carolina did on the offensive line last year. I remember one year, I think his first year, they had Spencer Pennington in there trying to beat Georgia. That was one of those good Mark Richt Georgia teams where the defense would take your head off, and they were running Thomas Brown. Shout out Thomas Brown, head coach of the Bears right now. And they were one of the most physical teams I've ever seen, those Georgia teams, Thomas Davis. And this poor Pennington kid was just getting destroyed. And they beat Alabama pretty bad. But I think I'm low a little bit here. But he's got a long track record with, everybody from Daniel Jones to Josh Allen to Cam Newton in the NFL. He is a quarterback guy and knows the position, and, Dowell Loggins as well. And so I just say as well. By the way, we got to talk to Shane Beamer about stop. He's gotten, it's like if you took a shot every time he says as well now, you will be drunk after one press conference. I caught myself. I'm going to start saying it now. But no, it's, he is about a really good quarterbacks coach. Don't know if he'll be the OC or not. There's a lot of mixed opinions out there about whether or not Dowell Loggins should call the bowl game. My answer to that is I don't care. I don't think it's going to make. Is it good for App State? Probably not. But is it good for Carolina? It doesn't matter. Hey, why not just close it out the right way? Or close it out like that. So, anyway, yeah, we'll see which way it goes, but I do think Shula has been a big part of it. I think if he gets the gig, he gets the gig. If Beamer goes outside and there's a better fit in his opinion and Sellers' opinion, then that's fine too. But it is attractive right now, and I think that there's a lot of don't you think there's a lot more interest in this thing than maybe there would be in a normal year? Because if you come here and you coach a player like that, he's going to make any OC look really good. And then, everybody's chasing head coaching jobs and maybe NFL jobs and stuff, right, Alex? And so don't you think Sellers is a big selling point for whoever ends up getting it?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Any offensive coordinator really want to come coach a guy like that because he can make really, anybody look really good just with what he can do, evading sacks and, getting positive yards. So, I think one thing with that is, Sellers would be the attractive part of it, but then the other attractive part of it is kind of what we've been talking about here before is the pieces you can potentially get around him because of the Norris Sellers. So I think it's a really attractive job right now. It's going to be interesting to see where Shane Beamer goes with it.
One of the things I've mentioned this the last couple of days, the fact that it is a sexy job. There's going to be offensive coordinators all over the country at the collegiate level that are interested in this, that have made that known to Coach Beamer, or at least their agents have, probably a bunch in the NFL as well. But one of the groups of people that I have omitted to mention, and maybe you've already thought about this, Alex, is a sitting head coach somewhere, because we are seeing that. I mean, think about Chip Kelly and what he did at Ohio State. We just saw Gus Malzahn hanging up at UCF and go right down the road to be the OC at Florida State. Maybe you can dig into that a little bit. I don't know who out there is prepared to say much on it, but I'm sure there's somebody or some buddies who go, this program I'm at now, being the head guy, is a losing proposition, and I'd rather go somewhere and coach a guy like this, Lenore Sellers, in a winning program with a bunch of money like the University of South Carolina, and see what we can do there.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see that trend in college football right now. You brought up two examples of Chip Kelly and Gus Malzahn. Like, I think you're starting to see that just because, a lot of these coaches are thinking, I can go be a coordinator somewhere and not have to deal with everything that's on my plate as a head coach. I mean, you could especially see that, maybe like a lower level head coach could even, make that transition just because it would help you get to that higher level. And, again, coming to coach Lenora Sellers, that's very attractive. And, I haven't really thought about that from a head coaching standpoint, but that is a trend that you're seeing these days with just how much is on the plate of these head coaches. And a lot of them are just kind of saying, the heck with it, I'll go make $1 million plus and be a coordinator and not have to have all that extra stuff that comes with being a head coach.
All right, Alex, the portal opened officially yesterday. Any updates today?
Not yet. Obviously there's some visits being scheduled. You got some offensive linemen who obviously are starting to schedule, a couple of names, like the Liberty offensive lineman, Jordan White is one who's going to be coming in for a visit on December 19th. That one's kind of been out there for a while. And, a lot of these guys that South Carolina's going after right now are going to have a lot of competition for. But again, South Carolina has a lot to sell. You think of him, you think of, Vanderbilt Gunnar, offensive tackle Gunnar Henson's one to watch too, just from a visit standpoint. So, I think as the week goes on, and you also have the tight end Zach Atkins, who, according to Chris Hummer, seems to be or is visiting as well. So I think as the portal continues to evolve, there's going to be more names that enter and more names that are going to show up on South Carolina's campus for a visit.
From the
I want to
portal
remind
to-
I just want to remind everybody the portal's not linear. Like everybody doesn't get in on the first day. Visits are not scheduled at any sort of prioritization. I remember last year, people were where are the D tackles, and well, they ended up doing really well at D tackle. Things just sort of pop up. So I would encourage. I mean, don't you remember that, Alex? I would encourage everybody to kind of be patient, and not get worried.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just one. The portal's only been open for a day, and I think a lot of that is just you see some of these other teams who are already scheduling visits. But I mean, this thing's going to be open for a while, and there's going to be names who continue to enter every day that South Carolina's going to go after. So there's no need to worry. Really, I mean, it's been one day. This thing, South Carolina's going to be selective in who they want, and you've seen that already, and it'll continue to happen.
I see a lot of guys that are like rolling out for their third and fourth time. And I'll also encourage everybody this because somebody asked about, well, Ole Miss has got crystal balls for 3 of the top 10. I'm not going to discourage anyone from looking at our rankings, the portal rankings. And I had a meeting on this in early November at 24/7 Sports headquarters. They've not fixed the fix. There wasn't enough time to fix them. I wouldn't put in a lot of stock in them at all. Bear Alexander is still rated 12th in the country. And I will lose all respect for any coach that takes that guy. He's bailed on 2 teams. He's got I guess a stepdad or something that just calls the shots. You bring that guy into your program, it's a losing proposition. And he's not even, he's not Walter Nolan or anybody like that. So just as a point of reference, don't get concerned about those rankings and Ole Miss getting whoever. Ole Miss is going to Ole Miss. They're going to have an impressive group. Lane's going to bring, but I mean, the guys Lane brought in outside of Nolan that were like highly regarded, those weren't even the guys that ended up making a lot of the plays for him. I mean, those guys like Trey Harris, he got from Louisiana Tech, who was highly regarded, but a guy from a lower level, things like that. So I would I've just seen some things out there. I don't want anybody to panic. It's a lot of good news right now, a lot of good things happening. So don't get caught up in things that don't mean much. Don't you think that's probably a sound proposition?
Yeah, think back to who South Carolina landed in this last transfer portal class, and there weren't. I mean, think about Demetrius Knight. Kyle Kennard, was I guess, highly ranked for the transfer portal, but wasn't one of those like top guys that everybody was coming after. So I think it's just one of those where, a lot of these guys look back and see how South Carolina made the impact last year. Demetrius Knight, guy who, South Carolina beat out not many teams for. I mean, it's going to, there's a lot of players in there and a lot of really good players in there. And South Carolina will do all it can to identify those guys and kind of replicate what it did this past transfer portal cycle.
Yeah. South Carolina and Missouri sort of attacked the portal in similar manners. I think Drinkwitz and Beamer are not alike, but they're different personalities, obviously, but the structure of what they do out there is similar to what they do at South Carolina. And they lost their 5-star freshman defensive lineman today. He entered the portal. He was third team last year. And just as an example, you mentioned Kyle Kennard. There's a school that really struggled to rush the passer this year and signed a lot of name guys. And Drinkwitz was saying, I guess at the banquet last night, it came down to he was sitting and having breakfast with Kyle Kennard, and then the kid committed to South Carolina. He congratulated Beamer on that. But it wasn't Missouri. There was a school that could have been problematic as far. I'm not saying they would have gotten him, but there would have been kind of a back and forth type negotiation. As it stood, it was pretty easy because he was the number one guy that just flat out passed. I mean, like I said, not that they would have definitely gotten him, but they ended up going with a big name dude, and they won 2 games this year and had all the momentum in the world. So be careful. I mean, you these guys, Beamer and company, know what they're doing in the portal. Let's roll.
Yeah, for anybody that questions that, go back and watch our interview with Darren Usher the other day. I think he summed it up, how far in advance you need to be of kids that actually get into the portal. All right, from the portal to the carousel, how about other coaches on this staff? Have you, not to back you into a corner here, Mr. Jones, but have you heard any birds chirping about potential programs trying to pluck 1 or 2 or 3 or more of the other guys on Shane Beamer's staff?
I haven't, to be honest. And, I'm sure there's, with the way South Carolina had the success this year, there's going to be, some teams who maybe come after some of these guys. But, I think you wonder, who Dowell Loggins will end up taking with him. Maybe you could see some off the field guys, maybe, go with Dowell that way. And because he obviously has relationships with a lot of those guys. But as far as, on the coaching staff, haven't heard any rumblings of any potential departures. And I think that kind of speaks to, the respect they all have for Coach Beamer and playing in that, or coaching in this, coaching in the building, and what he allows them to do and the freedom he gives them kind of to be themselves in coaching. So, as of right now, I haven't heard anything along the lines of coaches departing.
Want to give Shane a bunch of credit here, man. He's only been a head coach for 4 years, and he's got guys who he has brought in who have left to take other jobs. Look at Coach Limbo has done up at Buffalo, which they're going to the Bahamas for bowl season. I mean, I don't know if the fans of the Buffalo Bulls are happier that they won a bunch of games or that they get to spend the season, or at least part of it, on a beach as opposed to tucked into about 7 feet of snow in the upstate of New York. Jody obviously had a tough year at Murray State, but there's a long ways to go in that program. And you see Coach Loggins now. I mean, guys he's building a nice little nest egg here. I mean, it goes on his resume. And if you're looking to move around and Shane Beamer's staff has an opening, that's probably something dudes are considering, right? The fact that you get a job there and you have a chance to go somewhere else to better your career.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge selling point. I mean, think back to when Pete Limbo got that job at Buffalo, and in his press conference, how thankful he was for Shane Beamer and South Carolina for the opportunity that they presented to him. And, I think he kind of said, he wouldn't be in that position without South Carolina and Shane Beamer. So, I mean, the head coaching tree for Shane Beamer is starting to evolve a little bit. You're seeing some guys start to get these head coaching jobs, and Dowell Loggins is the next guy.
Yeah, Shane has a long way to go in his career. I think Coach Fink was messing with him the other day on social media about he's got 30 more years or something. And Shane was like, hell, I'll be 80. Who knows? But it's just not often that you see guys, it has to be respected because he's been picked on by folks in his own fan base around here. Pretty laughable. Certainly guys in other areas, but much like Coach Sweeney, this is how I'm going to do things around here. We're going to do things this way. Period. The end. I don't care what you say. I don't care what that guy with the Twitter handle says. I don't care what Message Board Warrior says. I don't care what these fans of this other. This is how we're going to do things here. And clearly it's working. I'm guessing, though, Alex, just a hunch here. We are not done with the coaching rumors as far as members of his staff being targeted by other programs.
Yeah, I mean, not saying that I've heard anything, but think of a guy like Sterling Lucas. Teams are going to look at what he's done, in South Carolina from a recruiting standpoint and a development standpoint. I mean, they're going to look at what he did with Kyle Kennard, a guy like Kyle Kennard who was known at Georgia Tech, but then now just became, awarded the best defensive player in the country. And, in the credit that, you hear Kyle Kennard last night talk about the credit that he gave, Shane Beamer and Sterling Lucas. And, a guy like him, and then what he did with Dylan Stewart. So, when you have success like this, like South Carolina had this season, there's going to be other teams that want to come and look at your coaching staff to see if they can add those guys. And, it'd be interesting to see how that evolves here.
I think it helps Carolina too right now, Alex. And you don't see a whole lot of big openings in college. Now, with as many NFL ties as these guys have, there's going to be quite a few NFL gigs come open. And, but that carousel starts spinning in January. So who knows? I think that the timing's good to have the type of breakthrough year. If you want to do an encore, you don't want a bunch of coaching changes right now. I've seen schools that have good years that make a bunch of coaching changes for no reason, or they leave, and then things kind of dip. Clemson in 2003 comes to mind. Bowden was a 63-17 year. They finished as good as anybody, finished 9-4. Then he decides to demote Brad Scott and fire him and give Mike O'Kane the offense and blah, blah. I mean, just all this. He tinkered all around with it. That sucked. And so the next year he went and hired the mad scientist Rob Spence, and that cost him his job. So, I could appreciate Beamer, and he gets this from his dad, sort of wanting that consistency. You don't necessarily have to have it. Nick Saban never had a consistent staff. But then you look at Dabo, and he usually does. I mean, rarely does he not have that consistency. So, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as the old saying goes. But I think right now, in my opinion, and see what you think about this, I would rather the staff stay as intact as it possibly can be heading into next season. Did you freeze up? Alex is Han Solo.
I just don't think he liked the question.
Hard night.
Solo.
I don't feel like answering that question. As it pertains to that, though, yeah, look, there, as you pointed out, JC, it's a really good sign when they're targeting the guys on your staff and the guys that aren't even on the field on your staff. And Carolina's got a boatload of those dudes that do a lot of great work behind the scenes that are certainly going to get some calls if they haven't already. And then, they have to make the decision that's best for them. But what's equally as important to that is how Shane has been able to identify quality coaches. And this goes back, Alex, to when he got hired at South Carolina. And there was a lot of folks that picked on him for the list that he had. And he's got a whiteboard and he's got all these guys. And I can go out and hire all kinds of great coaches and I can build a staff. And then, of course, the people that think that they know everything on planet Earth started, sending out little memes and making little jokes because they have fingers and a phone. And when you look back on, JC, I think you and I talked about this on the phone the other day, maybe. When you look back on this, though, it's reasonable to think that a lot of these guys who Shane probably was targeting early in his tenure probably wanted to wait and see how things would work out for Coach Beamer. No disrespect to him, nothing personal. But if I'm going to make a move in my adult life, my business life, my career, and I'm going to go work for a guy who's never been a head coach in the most difficult league to play in college football, I want to make sure that this is going to be something that's actually going to be a positive for me, not a negative. I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be able to survive because the program is surviving. And so I would venture a guess there are probably some guys who he's very close with who are excellent football coaches who are on the short list that maybe did tell him no. I'm not saying they did or didn't. I don't have any proof of that. but maybe did say, I appreciate it, but I'm gonna stick around here. And in the back of their minds, they're going, man, I sure love Shane, and I really hope it works out, and maybe it'll work out for the two of us on the same staff one day. But right now, I just want to see this thing through. He's at that point where after year 4, going 9-3, knocking on the door of the CFP, we all know they should be in, and playing in the Citrus Bowl, the most prestigious SEC bowl outside of the CFP, that they're taking notice. Okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He hires good football coaches. Good coaches leave and take gigs, the whole 9 yards. He's got a system. He's got some mojo, JC. He's got a story to sell now, as opposed to what he had 4 years ago. And so if you do have to go out and hire a replacement or 2 or 3 or whatever it may be, you have much more of a pick from that litter than you did before.
Yeah, I mean, look, he made 2 mistakes. Marcus Satterfield and Montario Hardesty, basically. Other than that, the guys that have left have been, gone on to other things because they, like with Justin Stepp, he changed his position, wanted to upgrade that. James Coley was here for a minute and went to Georgia. Situations like that where guys are here and gone after accepting the job have been very prevalent. And I think that speaks to your point. I also think that, Clayton White is a good coordinator. I like his scheme. His scheme is creative. But these guys need players. I mean, you got to, South Carolina has gradually raised the talent level here, but there was not a roster like this in his first 3 years. I also think this, when you talk about the definition of what you need on a college football staff these days has changed, because now with the portal and NIL and basically free agency and then high school recruiting and NIL and paying players and the transfer portal and all that, your staffs were already getting quite big. Well, now instead of, most of those people are helping manage the workload as it relates to roster. And you need coaches that your players are comfortable with. But the days of like Trooper Taylor going out and signing 14 guys for a school that he's recruiting for and then poorly coaching whatever position he coaches, those days are over. So you could swing back more towards the actual coaching side of it. And I think that's why you see Beamer liking NFL experience and NFL experience. I mean, you guys know, I'm pretty militant about the fact you can't really run an NFL offense in college like you do it at that level. But coaching the position at that level, I mean, it's football's football with regards to fundamentals and things like that. And you got guys, and he's also, everybody talked about wanting Christian Robinson, who's at Alabama now, and a good coach and a good player and a good recruit. His dad played at Carolina. He shunned the Gamecocks for Georgia and stayed at home. Everybody wanted him because he had this big recruiting track record, right? Well, Shane goes and hires Sterling Lucas, who had never recruited before. I'd be surprised if Christian Robinson has brought talent to the 2 schools he's been to as frequently and often as Sterling has. And Sterling's developing these guys too. So it's not always about the big rep coming in. Will Muschamp had on paper the best staff I've ever seen on paper at South Carolina to this day when you're talking about accomplished coaches. You had 2 national recruiters of the year and Lance Thompson and Brian McClendon. But the problem with that was those guys had never coached anywhere like South Carolina. They're used to just walking in the door and I'm from Alabama, I'm from Auburn, I'm from Florida, and getting guys. And so Will ended up recruiting most of those guys. So you also have to have guys that understand where they are. And like Pat was saying yesterday for this coordinator job, the culture here, there's a reason why you don't see a bunch of guys diving in the portal right now from here. There's a reason why, coaches aren't just looking, I want to go to LSU or I want to go here or I want to go there at this point. It's because, number one, it's a great place to work. It's great to work for Shane Beamer. And number 2, the University of South Carolina, Columbia, places. Those are good places to live. I mean, Jeremiah Donate said that the other day. And when you're winning, what I was told by a former coach on a former staff here is that it's a hard job. But when you win, it's the most fulfilling job that they've ever had, just because of the gratitude. And, you know, Gamecock fans, we may think because we deal with the diehards, well, they're picky and impatient and all that. We have it good, folks. We actually did compared to some other places. And so, you know, Alex, as we got you back in from the internet demons, and they are demons.
Yes.
What can you tell me? You're on the ground down there, you know, closer to it really than I am on a daily basis. Do you get a sense of folks just liking coming to work and play and all that now at Carolina? Like it's just kind of a place you get a feeling at, right?
Yeah, I think Shane Beamer makes it a really fun place to coach. You know, I think one thing, you know, he obviously, you know, these guys work and they work really hard, but, you know, I think he, you know, values that family time with, you know, each other's families. And I think that's something that really resonates with coaches. And you hear about all the time about just how much these coaches enjoy coaching at South Carolina and being around. And I think one thing too with the staff, like, you know, it seems like all the staff really get along together and all are really close. And I think that's something that's kind of a selling point for him and the coach when he's hiring coaches. And kind of to JC's point earlier, you know, Shane Beamer's had a lot of opportunities maybe to go get that big name coach that everybody wants him to get, but he's going to take his time and he's going to find the right coach that fits everything that South Carolina needs from a coaching standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint. And so far, you know, he's, you know, done a really nice job with that.
All right, Alex, we got to get you out here in just a couple of minutes. As far as the game goes, we're 3 weeks away from kickoff on New Year's Eve at 3:00 down at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. Have you taken an early peek at the matchup? What have you learned? And have you learned anything else in regards to bowl opt-outs?
Yeah, it's been quiet on the bowl opt-out front, so we'll see, you know, here in these next few weeks what that looks like. But, you know, Illinois obviously is a really good team. You know, they had a pretty good year there in the Big Ten, and, you know, Brett Bielema is a really good coach that's going to have those guys ready. And, you know, I think offensively, when you look at Illinois, you know, you think about Luke Altmaier, the quarterback, has been really solid this year, and, you know, that's going to be a fun, you know, matchup to see him go up against not only the South Carolina defensive line, but the secondary and what they can do. And, you know, they're really good wide receiver in Pat Bryant, but, you know, he had 54 receptions for 900, almost 1,000 yards this year, but he's not going to be in the game. He's opted out for the bowl game. So that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch, especially up front in the trenches. Because I think, you know, when you think about Brett Bielema offenses and really Brett Bielema teams, they're always really good in the trenches. And, you know, Illinois is that. And so in the trenches, that's where most games are won. I think that's going to be the key in this one. You know, as we sit here 3 weeks away and look for it, you know, obviously there's still a lot of time to really scout the game and see what it is. But, you know, that's kind of the big thing that stands out is, you know, whoever's going to win the trenches, this one has a really good chance.
No question.
I'll caution everybody, and we'll talk more about Illinois as the show goes along. This is not Brett Bielema's ground and pound Wisconsin or Arkansas team. Barry Lunny Jr. is their OC. He's really crafty at calling plays. They're a lot like Georgia Tech in some ways. I'd kind of talent level wise, they're somewhere between Tech and Missouri. But as far as like how they scheme and attack, yeah, they're going to run the ball, but it's creative. And those two receivers caught almost 100 passes this year, and they don't give up either. If you're wondering, why the hell did you? Why you know so much about Illinois? It's because my buddy up here, the one guy that understands college football, I've said this before. He's a big Illinois fan, so he'll watch the Gamecocks on Saturdays, and I'll watch the Illini, and we'll cheer for each other. So I guess that's not going to happen here in a couple of weeks. But they're a very resilient team. They're much more like, you know, attitude-wise, they're much more like his Wisconsin teams than his Arkansas teams, which had, you know, he didn't establish the BDB culture there.
Yeah, and I really like Lou Altmaier, the quarterback. You know, I watched him a good bit this season, and I think it was the Nebraska game. I really kind of watched that game, and he's really good, and he can make some things go with his legs too. So that's going to be a fun matchup to see that defensive line go up against Luke Altmaier, because I think he's had a really good season.
No question about that. 3 weeks away from that ball game. Illinois and South Carolina, two teams that have never played. Carolina's a 10.5-point favorite in it as well. Alex, we'll certainly talk to you next week before we hit a little bit of a Christmas break around here. I'm sure between now and then there will be much more to discuss, I would imagine. Have a wonderful week. As always, thanks for all that you do, man. You work hard. You do a great job, and Hampton County is proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
Always appreciate being on. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. My wife asked where you were from today, Alex. and she, I guess I forgot to tell her. I said, well, because she's like, she was a big fan of the Murdoch stuff, or I'm not a fan, but we watched it every day. Yeah. I told her, yeah, she's worried about you, man, since you're young and a single man out there on the mean streets of the capital city. She's very motherly, so she was asking about you. So anyway, have a good one, Alex.
Thanks, y'all. See y'all next time.
Thanks, buddy. There you go.